The grocery store is oftentimes filled with a lot of junk food, but it's also filled with a lot of fake foods.
In a world where everything seems just a bit too good to be true, the food on your plate might be fooling you too. From that rich olive oil you drizzle over your salad to the honey you stir into your tea, some foods aren't what they appear to be. The truth is, food fraud is more common than you might think. So, before you take your next bite, let's dive into the sneaky world of fake foods that could be hiding right in your kitchen. Number 12. Crab. More often than not, the crab you're eating is made from surimi, a seafood paste that's packed with ground-up whitefish like threadfin bream or Alaska pollock. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's the same stuff used in McDonald's Filet-O-Fish and those fish sticks we all know. In a factory over in Dangjin, South Korea, they take these blocks of surimi and shred them into a dough-like texture. Then, workers add in salt, starch, sugar, and a dash of crab flavoring, often sourced from actual crab stock. The whole mix is rolled into a log and colored with food dye made from tomato and paprika, giving it that signature orangey red look that tricks the eye into thinking it's the real deal. It's all perfectly legal as long as it's labeled as imitation crab meat. But here's where things get sketchy. Some places try to pass off this imitation stuff as real crab. Take the UK restaurant chain Frankie and Benny's, for example. They admitted that more than half of the crab in their crab bruschetta was actually imitation. This isn't just a restaurant problem either. Suppliers sometimes label cheaper crabs from Asia as pricier types, like the coveted Maryland blue crabs, found off the east coast of the United States. These blue crabs, especially those caught in Maryland's waters, have seen their populations dwindle due to environmental issues affecting water quality, particularly in Chesapeake Bay. This scarcity means their prices are sky high, and once the meat is picked from the shell and labeled as lump crab, it's nearly impossible to tell what you're actually getting. Federal law enforcement once busted a seafood supplier in Virginia for falsely labeling 400,000 pounds of imported lump crab as product of USA. In fact, a study by Oceana back in 2015 found that almost 40% of Maryland blue crab cakes sold in Washington, D.C. and Maryland didn't contain any real Maryland blue crab at all. So the next time you dig into that crab dish, you might want to ask yourself, do you really know what's on your plate? Number 11. Honey. Fake honey is everywhere, and you might be surprised to learn that about 1 out of every 3 jars of honey traded internationally isn't the real deal. Genuine honey is the product of a perfect mix of nature's magic and a whole lot of patience. Bees do most of the heavy lifting, buzzing around and gathering nectar, while beekeepers have to carefully watch over them without disturbing their delicate process. To keep from getting stung, beekeepers suit up from head to toe, complete with a face mask and full body coverings. They use a smoker to calm the bees before gently removing the honeycomb frames. Next, they scrape off the wax seals that hold the honey in each tiny cell, and then it's off to the centrifuge, where spinning pushes the honey out of the combs. It's a pretty precise operation, and every drop of honey has a story of hard work behind it. But here's the catch. The amount of honey on store shelves around the world is way more than bees could possibly produce. This can only mean one thing. Counterfeit honey is flooding the market. These fakes are often a mix of high fructose corn syrup or other cheap syrups made from glucose, rice, cane, or beet. A lot of experts point fingers at China, the world's largest honey exporter, as a major source of the fake stuff. Some fraudsters there have even figured out how to make sugar syrups that can dodge lab tests when mixed with real honey. Or they remove all the pollen from the honey, making it impossible to trace its origin. Back in 2013, the U.S. Justice Department cracked down on 2 American honey importers in what became one of the biggest food fraud cases in U.S. history, now famously known as Honeygate. These importers rerouted fake Chinese honey, which was tainted with antibiotics, through other countries to dodge import fees. When they got caught, they ended up paying millions in fines. Number 10. Lobster. Lobsters are caught all over the world, but the priciest ones come from the waters off the coast of Maine. Here, the fishers proudly call themselves lobstermen, and their job isn't easy. They haul traps one by one from the ocean. They set bait, and when the lobsters get a whiff, they crawl in. Getting out? That's the hard part. Each trap has special escape vents to let baby lobsters go free, giving them a chance to grow up. It can take up to 7 years for a lobster to reach maturity, and only those within the legal size range, between 3¼ and 5 inches from the head to the start of the tail, can be kept. Anything bigger gets tossed back since those are the breeders keeping the population going. Lobstermen can check as many as 300 traps a day, pulling in around 900 pounds of fresh lobster. And with live lobsters fetching over $30 a pound, which is more than 4 times what shrimp costs, it's no wonder some folks try to pass off fakes. It's easy to get duped, especially if you're eating dishes where the lobster is chopped up, like in ravioli or soups. In those cases, you could be getting cheaper substitutes like spiny Caribbean lobsters, which have no claws, taste less sweet, and cost about half as much. Back in 2016, Inside Edition called out Red Lobster for using langostino, a type of shellfish more like crawfish than lobster, in their lobster bisque. After the investigation, Red Lobster updated their menu to say they use langostino. But there's an even sneakier swap going on: fish. That same investigation revealed that over 1/3 of lobster samples tested in the United States were actually cheaper whitefish like whiting or pollock. So how do you make sure you're getting the real deal? If you're buying lobster yourself, go for the whole ones. The key to avoiding fakes is to grab them fresh and break them down on your own. Always check that they're alive, because once they die, the meat starts to break down fast. Look for whole claws too. Claw meat is soft, while the tail meat has a bit more chew to it. When eating out, choose dishes where the lobster is served as close to whole as possible. Steer clear of soups and pastas with shredded lobster, because once it's chopped and cooked, it's nearly impossible to know what you're actually eating. Number 9. Tuna. Bluefin tuna sits at the top of the seafood world, fetching sky-high prices due to its size, rich fat content, and rarity. These giants roam the North Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, and in Japan, they're the stars of the live auctions at Toyosu Market, the biggest fish market on the planet. Buyers like Takayuki Shinoda get a brief 15 minutes to inspect the fresh catch, eyeing every nick and scratch before the bell rings, kicking off a frenzy of bids. As bluefin demand has skyrocketed, so has its price tag. Back in 2019, one bluefin set a jaw-dropping record at Toyosu, selling for over $3 million. But it's not all smooth sailing. Overfishing has pushed Pacific bluefin stocks to the brink, and yellowfin tuna aren't far behind, with their numbers teetering towards collapse. Illegal fishing only adds to the mess. In 2018, Spanish authorities busted a massive operation that moved more than $14 million worth of illegally caught tuna between Malta and Spain, leading to the arrest of dozens. Tuna's migratory lifestyle complicates things further, as fishing vessels often cross multiple jurisdictions, making regulation a nightmare. And then there's the other kind of fraud: fake tuna. Some are bold enough to sell escalar, a cheaper fish that can pack dangerous levels of mercury, as white tuna. The potential profit from these scams is huge. A study by Oceana in 2013 found that 59% of tuna samples in US restaurants and grocery stores were mislabeled. So, how do you avoid getting swindled? If you're after bluefin, maybe save it for a special night out at a high-end restaurant where the chances of getting the real deal are better. Spotting bluefin at your local supermarket? Probably too good to be true. You might find yellowfin there, but even then, check that price tag. Real bluefin is a rare treat, and it's not going to show up at bargain prices. Keep your eyes peeled, and don't let the fakes fool you. Number 8. Saffron. Saffron, often called red gold, holds the title of the world's priciest spice, but the market is full of fakes. True saffron comes from the 3 tiny delicate threads known as stigmas of the Crocus sativus flower. Over in Kashmir, India, where it's grown, these flowers need about 2 years to mature before they can be harvested. The process is painful. The stigmas are so fragile that farmers have to pluck them by hand, and the less valuable yellow tips are carefully trimmed and sifted out. In the end, It takes more than 150,000 flowers just to produce 1 kilo of saffron, which can fetch a whopping $3,000. With prices that high, it's no wonder counterfeiters are jumping in to make a quick buck, and they don't hold back. Some are selling everything from hay and horsehair to coconut fibers, and even random roots, all dressed up as saffron. To tackle this problem, local authorities set up a trading center where farmers can authenticate their saffron and earn a GI, geographic indication tag. But so far, this effort is just scratching the surface of the fraud. So, how do you make sure you're getting the real stuff? One simple way is the water test. Drop a few saffron threads into water or milk and watch what happens. Real saffron will release a yellow color slowly, while fakes will give off a quick burst of red or orange. And unlike the real threads, which stay intact, the fake ones will break apart easily. Keep in mind that just because you're paying top dollar doesn't guarantee authenticity. But if you're paying too little, you're almost definitely getting a dud. Real saffron doesn't come cheap, so if the price seems like a steal, you might just be robbed. Number 7. Scallops. Scallops are a seafood delicacy that many people love, particularly when they're freshly caught. These small mollusks are often found in bays or shallow coastal waters. Peru is a significant player in the scallop industry, exporting about $88 million worth in 2019, with more than half of that coming from Sechura Bay. Here's how the process unfolds. Fishermen head out to the seabed, where they dredge up the bivalves using nets, bringing them aboard their boats. Unfortunately, scallops are highly perishable once out of the water, so they are swiftly transported to processing facilities. There, workers skillfully shuck the scallops at high speed, removing the valuable meat from the shells. The scallops are then thoroughly washed to eliminate any remaining debris from the ocean. The United States is a major market for scallops, with New York City being a key destination. In fact, in New York, a plate featuring 3 scallops from Massachusetts can cost as much as $55. With such high prices, it's not surprising that some unscrupulous individuals try to take advantage. In some cases, criminals have been caught cutting skate or whitefish into coins resembling scallops, hoping consumers won't notice the difference. They even inject these fake scallops with salt water or saline to increase their size and weight, thereby boosting profits. Although illegal, this practice does occur. So, how can you ensure that you're buying genuine scallops? Experts recommend purchasing scallops still in their shells and paying attention to the seasons, such as the Nantucket Bay scallops, which are harvested from October to March. Number 6. Wagyu beef. Wagyu, which translates to Japanese cow, isn't just any beef. It's a delicacy that comes from 4 specific breeds in Japan. The Japanese government has set some strict rules on how these cows are raised to keep their meat quality top-notch. One of the most famous types is Kobe beef, originating from the Kobe area in Japan. These steers, castrated bulls, are pampered with a diet of rice and corn. This special care gives their meat that mouth-watering tenderness, a hint of sweetness, and that signature marbling food lovers rave about. By 2019, a pound of Wagyu could fetch up to $200, and the cows themselves could go for a whopping $30,000, which is more than 10 times the cost of Black Angus cattle. Japan exports only a few thousand tons a year, so the Wagyu you find in American restaurants may not always live up to the Japanese standards. Many Wagyu cattle in the US have been crossbred with other resilient breeds to withstand conditions like the scorching heat of Texas, which means their meat isn't pure Wagyu. According to the USDA, a cow just needs one parent with at least 93.7% Wagyu genetics to qualify, meaning the beef you're eating could be less than half Wagyu and still carry the name. Here's the kicker. The USDA doesn't regulate what's on restaurant menus, so it's easier for places to list Wagyu even if it's not the real deal. But there are ways to spot the genuine stuff. First, check the meat. Real Wagyu has that distinctive marbling, with fine, intricate white lines of fat woven throughout. True Kobe beef is rarely served on the bone, and it doesn't usually make a good burger since it's too tender to hold together in patty form. And if you're still not sure, you can ask to see the certificate of authenticity for the Wagyu, or check if the restaurant has that bronze statue that signals they're authorized to sell Kobe beef. So, if you're looking to splurge on a real Wagyu steak, keep your eyes sharp. The marbling should be an art piece in itself, and the meat should practically melt in your mouth, because when it comes to Wagyu, only the genuine one will do. Before we move on, here is today's subscriber's pick. The man in the picture is carrying Parmigiano Reggiano, a cheese unlike any other. Crafted under strict, centuries-old rules, it can only be made in Italy's Emilia-Romagna region, the only place with the 3 special bacteria needed for its unique flavor. The cheese-making process is a work of art. It begins with a blend of old skim milk and fresh milk, mixed with whey and rennet. The curds are cooked briefly to remove unwanted bacteria and are then formed into a massive curd weighing around 220 pounds, ready to become cheese. Next, the curd is shaped in molds and marked to certify it as genuine Parmigiano Reggiano. After a brining process to form its hard rind, the cheese is aged in a large room for at least 1 year, developing the crunchy crystals that give it its savory flavor. Some wheels are aged for up to 10 years, making them highly valuable, sometimes selling for over $1,000 each. But authenticity can be tricky. While Italy strictly adheres to traditional methods, other countries like the US have more relaxed rules. American Parmesan can be aged for just 10 months compared to the required year for the Italian version. In grated Parmesan, fillers like rice flour or cellulose, often from wood pulp, are allowed to prevent clumping. Although cellulose levels are recommended to stay between 2% and 4%, companies aren't required to list exact amounts, and oversight is minimal. In 2016, a Bloomberg report found that Walmart's 100% Parmesan contained 7.8% cellulose, nearly double the suggested limit, but lawsuits over misleading labels were dismissed. Worse, fake Parmigiano Reggiano is becoming more common, with counterfeit cheese generating an estimated $2 billion annually. This fraud damages Italy's genuine Parmigiano industry, making it harder for consumers to find the real thing. So, how do you ensure you're getting authentic Parmigiano Reggiano? Avoid shaker bottles and look for cheese labeled Parmigiano Reggiano in dots, with a protected designation of origin, DOP, label and trust your taste buds. The real deal has those crunchy crystals and a distinct fruity, nutty flavor that's hard to miss. Number 5. Salmon. Salmon, the superstar of the seafood world, often finds itself under the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. Imagine biting into that luscious pink fillet, thinking you're savoring wild-caught delicacy, only to find out it's actually rainbow trout or mislabeled farm-raised salmon. In a surprising twist, a study by Oceana tested 82 samples across the US, revealing that nearly half were mislabeled, mostly farmed fish sold as the more expensive wild-caught kind. Wild salmon, which is caught in the northern waters like Alaska, can cost more than double compared to its farm-raised cousins. Catching wild salmon isn't just a matter of tossing a net, it's a high-stakes game. In Alaska, fishers need a special $25,000 permit and gear made just for catching these sleek swimmers. The job's tough, with risks of capsizing in the rough, shallow waters, and there's no guarantee of a successful catch. But land one of these wild treasures, and it's payday. On the flip side, farm-raised salmon spend their lives in giant ocean pens, rubbing fins with hundreds of other fish. Just like people, fish get sick, especially in crowded spaces, which means antibiotics are often part of their daily diet. And here's the catch. Those medicines can end up in the fillet on your plate. A so-called raised-in-the-wild salmon found in a New York store turned out to be just another fish grown in an ocean pen. It was raised in the wild, all right, but in a pen, not the open ocean. So, how do you tell the real deal from the imposter? Wild-caught salmon boasts a deep, vibrant red hue, thanks to their tough, natural lifestyle. Farm-raised salmon, on the other hand, tends to have a paler pink color with more marbling, thanks to a cushy life with no ocean currents to fight against. Their fillets are thicker, meatier, and just plain bigger. No triathlons for these fish. They're more like pampered pets than wild athletes. When it comes to salmon, it pays to be picky. Whether you're grilling, baking, or sashimiing, make sure your fish is the real wild deal. Because in the world of salmon, not all that glitters is gold, or, in this case, wild. Number 4, olive oil. Authentic extra virgin olive oil is like liquid gold, fresh from the first squeeze of ripe olives. Most of the good stuff hails from sunny farms in Spain, Italy, or Greece. Take a look at Antequera in Spain, home to the world's largest olive oil producer. During the harvest season from November to January, workers get busy with vibrating machines that shake the olives right off the trees. The olives tumble into trailers and head straight to the factory where the magic happens. There, the olives get a thorough wash before being ground into a thick paste. No heat, no chemicals, just pure, unadulterated goodness. Massive decanters press out the rich, golden oil, which is then pumped into storage and eventually bottled up. This liquid luxury can go for over $10 for a 17-ounce bottle, making it one of the priciest cooking oils around. And that high price tag has attracted some shady characters, as fake olive oil has been a problem since the days of ancient Rome. These fraudsters are crafty too. Some fill their bottles with cheap soybean or vegetable oil. Others sneak in lower-grade olive oil, but still slap on that extra virgin label. Some operations are so slick they've got their own supply chains, from farms to bottling facilities. Europol even busted one such ring in Italy, proving just how deep this deception goes. So, how can you make sure you're getting the real deal? First, skip anything labeled just virgin, olive oil blend, or light olive oil. Those aren't the pure stuff. Check the press-on date too. Most European oils are harvested in the fall and winter, so if you're picking up a Spanish bottle in August, it's likely almost a year old. Remember, olive oil loses its punch after a year or two, so never go for a bottle that's over 2 years old. And don't forget the sniff test. Authentic extra virgin should have a fruity, grassy aroma. If it smells like nothing or worse, like it's gone off, it's time to put that bottle back. Number 3, red snapper. Red snapper is like the crown jewel of fish in the Gulf of Mexico, and it's one that a lot of folks are after. Why? Well, it's delicious and it's not cheap. That's why it's a top target for sneaky substitutes. Red snapper is tough to breed in fish farms, so what you get in the United States is usually caught in the wild. Fishermen reel them in off the shores of places like Florida, Mississippi, and Alabama. But here's the kicker. In a report from 2013, Oceana tested 120 red snapper samples from across the country. Guess what? Only 7 of those were the real deal. The problem is, red snapper has white flesh, making it easy for some sellers to swap it with something cheaper. If you're not a fish expert, staring at 2 white fillets, you might never know the difference. More often than not, you're actually getting something like tilapia. Tilapia can cost a quarter of the price of red snapper, but it's not as good for you. It doesn't pack the same punch of omega-3s or vitamin B12 that red snapper does. So, if you're a fan of that sweet and slightly nutty flavor that red snapper is known for, how can you make sure you're not being duped? One of the best ways is to buy the fish whole. Don't be scared off by the head. The folks at the seafood counter will happily cut it up for you. But if you're only buying fillets, ask for skin-on pieces. The red skin can be a good giveaway. Pay attention to the shape and feel too. Tilapia has a more rounded body, from head to tail, while red snapper has a wide body that narrows down to a small tail. Also, give the fillet a gentle squeeze. Tilapia is firmer and more solid, while red snapper tends to be a bit softer and more delicate. Keep these tips in mind, and you'll be much better prepared to snag the real red snapper you're craving. Number 2, wasabi. Ever dipped your sushi into that green paste and felt the burn? Chances are it wasn't real wasabi. In fact, only about 1 in 100 servings of wasabi in the US and just 5 in 100 in Japan are the real thing. The rest is usually a mix of horseradish, sweeteners, and food starch. The FDA doesn't have strict rules for wasabi, so as long as the label says prepared wasabi, it can be anything, even just horseradish. Real wasabi is rare because it's incredibly hard to grow. It's part of the same family as horseradish and cabbage, but much pricier, up to 30 times more expensive. Why? Because it's considered one of the toughest plants to cultivate commercially. It thrives in the perfect conditions found in Japanese mountain springs, with mild temperatures, perfect shade, and well-drained gravel soil. The Wasabi company in the UK has managed to recreate these ideal conditions, but it still takes about 18 months for the plants to be ready for harvest. And when they are, the price can reach $319 per kilo. So, how can you tell if you're eating real wasabi? Check the texture. Real wasabi is chunkier and has a bit of grit, unlike the smooth paste from horseradish blends. The taste is also different, offering a subtle, nuanced kick that doesn't overwhelm your taste buds. Number 1. Caviar. Caviar, those tiny, glossy pearls of luxury, are among the world's most expensive and most faked delicacies. But what makes them so elusive and costly? It all begins with sturgeon roe, which is challenging to harvest. Most sturgeon species are critically endangered, so nearly all caviar now comes from farm-raised fish. Take Assapenser, Africa's first caviar farm, located in Madagascar's highlands. It raises 6 types of sturgeon, but the process is slow. It takes these fish a decade to mature before they start laying eggs. The harvesting is delicate. The egg sacs are removed, the roe is separated, lightly salted, and then aged for 4 months to develop its signature nutty flavor. Assapenser markets this treasure under the Rova brand, with a kilo fetching over $5,000, making it a prime target for counterfeiters. In Europe, studies show that 1 in 10 samples labeled as caviar is fake, sometimes not even fish eggs. Some scammers use sturgeon farm waste to mold fake pearls, which can be hazardous to health. Others pass off cheaper fish eggs as caviar, like a US company caught selling paddlefish roe as the real thing, leading to the owner serving 2 years in prison and facing hefty fines. As caviar becomes more coveted, so do the tricks to fake it. To avoid being fooled, ask to see the tin. It should have a non-resealable label and a certificate with details on the species, farm-raised status, country of origin, and harvest year. For an extra check, try the hot water test. Real caviar firms up in heat, while fakes dissolve. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.